welcome back again. So today I did the beast. We are doing the Stella by Swoon patterns. I've done slip pocket on the back. I didn't do the zipper pocket on the front, and I made it with a funky handle. So if you'd like to see how I watch it, please stay tuned. Alright guys, so what I have done to prepare for this is I have got a 2-inch wide piece of vinyl, and then I've also got a 3-inch wide piece of vinyl. I have put a center line down both pieces, and then on the wider piece, which is in my case the black, I have put 3 lengths of double-sided tape. So I've put 1 on the middle strip like I normally would, and then I've got 1 on each edge. So I've done it just off the edge so it's not going to poke through. I was going to do this on camera, but my tape had a bit of a meltdown, so I have just decided to start the video from here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to line up this middle line with the middle line on the other piece. Now this might seem a little time consuming, and it probably is, but I think that this is going to look amazing. So I'm just having it back, and I'm just rolling it down and lining up that line as I go. So it's not overly complicated and it's not overly hard. So I'm just rolling it back on itself and then pressing down and getting stuck to it, as you can tell. So we want it on that center line because that means that both of our side strips will then be even. So again, because it's double-sided tape, you can just peel it back to where it veers off and then go again. I went crooked. Right, that was my fault. So you could probably do this instead of at your machine. You'd probably be better off to do this at a table. But I've committed now, so I'm not getting up. So along the center line, it does roll on pretty quickly, pretty easily. I mean, I've definitely done harder straps than this. Close to the end. Now, my vinyls, these are actually from 2 different companies. So one of mine is longer than the other, but that doesn't matter. So I've got a little bit extra on the end, so I can just trim that off. It's not a big deal. It was only like 1 inch anyway. Okay, so now we just go along and we fold over the other side. So you want to get it all the way to the edge of the first red vinyl and then just fold them over. So what we're aiming for is this really cute look. So you can, instead of having the vinyl here, you could use fabric. I would possibly, depending on how thick your fabric is, if it is quite light, I would probably interface it with a medium to heavy interfacing, just depending on how stiff you would like your strap to be. So I'm just going to go along and bend that over, and it's sticking because I've used the double-sided tape. So it's nice and quick. So this part is a lot quicker than centering it, but the centering it is important. Alright, so that's now all bent down. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to do a top stitch along each of the black edges. So I'm going to use my 3 3/4 stitch length. And I'm just going to, so I'm doing right next to that line. So it's not quite 1/8 of an inch, so I'm not lining it up with the center of my foot. I'm just trying to do it nice and close to that edge. Now because everything is taped down, I can sew that quite quickly. And then I'm just going to back stitch and come off that end, trim it, and then go down the other side. I decided I didn't want stitches across because I will be riveting this. And back stitch. Just gonna square up this edge a little bit. Pop that in the bin. So now we have this funky looking strap. So I'm using plastic strap connectors for this strap, mainly because I really struggle to find 2-inch clips. So I have found them in plastic, so I'm using it in plastic. I think you can still get these from Bunnings, this part, but these ones have been discontinued. So I get mine, I call up a shop called Beehive in Townsville, and they ship them to me. Alright, so we're going to put our strap through. Now I want the red on top, so I'm going to feed the black onto itself. Like so. You know what? I think I am going to stitch this after all. So, I'm sticking with my 3.5 stitch length because I don't want to over perforate my stuff. So I'm just going to do 3 stitches and then back stitch and then stitch along and then back stitch. I have faith that this thread will hold that. If you don't, or if you're just, you know, want to be super thorough, you can actually do one of those X's across there. Alright, so now I'm going to face it lying down, and I'm going to stick my clip on to the edge, and then make it go back along itself, making sure that nothing is twisted. And then I'm going to go back through the clip. Now, because of the way we've done the vinyl, this should fit all size clips. You shouldn't need an extra thick one because there's not an extra thick amount of layers. So then again, I'm going to slide that onto there, bend the black onto itself and stitch it down. And then that is your strap done, and we can move on to the bag. I might go 1 stitch length up and then do a second line. Beautiful. So that is the strap done. So I'm going to pop that over out of the way. The next thing I'm going to grab is this is my loop connector for the straps. So I'm going to put some double-sided tape along the center of this. I've already marked the center line as I am cutting. So when I cut out all strap and strip type things, I will do the cut lines in blue, and then the center line, while I'm there, I rule it in red, which is why I use a 4-pen. So I know in my brain not to cut any red lines that I see, but then I've already marked it for sitting at the machine. Because it is much easier on a cutting table to mark it than it is sitting here with my limited space. Obviously this wouldn't matter, but like a giant strip is a lot more difficult. Alright, so I'm just going to stitch 1/8 of an inch each side of that center line. Because I think it's a really cool detail. I like the way that looks. And you'll notice I didn't back stitch because this is actually 2 of the connectors. So I'm going to fold it in half and snip it. like so. And then I'm going to take my D-rings and slide them on so that I don't forget to do this, because otherwise I forget to put these in. I have done it several times and then I have to unpick the bag to put them in. So I have worked out that my brain remembers them if they do them first. So, where should we start? Let's start with all of our smaller pieces. So I have altered this pattern a little bit. So my flaps for this bag, so my front pockets are actually the Swoon Sydney pocket size. So this is the Sydney pocket pieces, and I construct it the same way as the Sydney because I don't like the big and small pockets that the Stella comes with. I like symmetry, so I did both of mine the same. So I'm just going to grab all of these pieces and I'm going to turn my iron on now so it'll be ready by the time I'm there. And then these are my side pockets. So I'm also going to stitch those now as well so that I can get all the smaller pieces done. And then there's less actual pieces in my pile. So this I have interfaced with the Formfuse 1600, which I have discovered is called Extra Heavy Non-Woven Iron-On Interfacing. I actually am going to start putting it on my website for those that don't like Spotlight or don't live near one. And then all my lining pieces I have interfaced with a non-woven iron-on medium. So they're firm, but not too firm. So then we're just going to put right sides together. Now, because of the curves on this, I want them to look nice. So I'm actually going to pin it, which is something I don't do very often because usually I'm fine. These ones do, however, tend to move. And because this is a velvet, it's going to potentially make it more slippery. So I am just going to pin all of these pieces, which again, will probably take longer in the video, but that's okay. Now, with these pockets, we want to stitch the top three. So we don't want to stitch this bottom one. So the easiest way to do that is to not put clips there. And then I know not to stitch that side. So if I set all of these up now, I can just chain stitch them all. So I'm just going to put clips. These, I don't need to put this many clips, but they are going to tell me which sides to stitch. So I don't have to think about it later. Now the placement on these pockets, because we're doing like a cool cargo thing, it actually doesn't matter about the placement of these, but I did fussy cut both the sides and the flat pieces so that they look cool. And so while we're here, I'm also going to clip these. So these we are just going to stitch top and bottom, which I'm sure you're about to see. But if I do all my small pieces now, then they're done and I can just sit them aside. Because for me, the name of the game is to, you know, halve my piece load because this bag is huge. Okay, so I'm on a 2.5 stitch length and I've got the velvet side down. So I've got my lining side up. I'm going to back stitch. Stitch around, making sure that I take care with those curves. Back stitch, grab the next one. Now, if the weight of this is annoying you, you can clip it off once you've gone past there a little bit. I also just ran out of bobbin thread, but that's okay. I have prepared more today. So if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I don't fully fill my bobbins, as I tend to find I get a lot more issues when they're super full. They fall off and loop and carry on, and it's just not worth it. So I fill them about 98%. And then I don't know if you just saw that, but I've just pulled up the excess so that I can continue sewing right where I left off. See, I can hear that that's already got issues. Apparently I still didn't take enough out of my bobbin. So see, oh, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got that loop sticking out the side here. if you overfill your bobbin, that's what happens. It's very annoying. Although I didn't think I overfilled this one. Anyway. It can also happen if you've got a very full bobbin and you backstitch too quickly. Sometimes it doesn't like that either. And then sometimes it's just being fussy for fussy's sake. Okay, so I'm going to start. So this is the end I don't want to stitch. So I'm going to start here and stitch up. And I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Because again, I like my pockets nice and big. And I'm going to back stitch there and then grab the next one. Let's not push them on the floor. I will have to chase them. So I'm going to pop them back over there. Needle down. I'm going to trim that off so I don't knock everything on the floor. Last side. So then these ones I want to do top and bottom. So the two long sides. But I don't want to cut them off. I just want to chain stitch them. So then I'll chop this one off and come and do the bottom. This way of sewing just saves a little bit of thread. And while, you know, some threads aren't crazy expensive, it's still nice to be able to save it where you can, because there's nothing worse than, you know, running out of bobbin thread or top thread. So I chain stitch as much as I can so that I have less wastage. Alright, so now we can turn all of those pieces inside out. Now the ones with the straight lines, I don't have to trim the seam allowance down. I'm literally just going to turn them out. So it'll look like that. Because one side is obviously thicker than the other, they don't sit flat yet, which is why we need our iron. So I'm going to turn both of those. Now everything else, I'm going to trim down a little bit. So grab your zigzag scissors, and I'm just going to cut off those corners. So I'm going to taper them down. I'm not just going to do a 45 straight across the edge. I've actually tapered it to chop off most of the bulk. So I'm going to bulk cut and then I'll turn everything. So I've cut all of that. I've missed a bit there, but that's because my scissors are blunt and it's a velvet. And so then I'm just going to cut the curves. I don't have to cut the front straight part, but I will be cutting the curves. Alright, chuck all that in the bin, and then we can start turning them out. So the way I turn is I stick my fingers in, grab my thumbs, and push out. So my thumbs are very strong from doing this, probably. So again, we're going to open it up and then grab a corner and push it out. That one I use my pointer finger because I want a nice point, basically. It's not why I use a pointer finger. I also will probably end up doing this to poke the corners out. I want them as square and as nice as possible. So this is actually a flute cleaner. It is my turning, pointing, stabbing, poking stick. I don't really know. But it helps me turn out a lot of things. So on the NCW, I actually stick it in and then just roll it around the whole edge, and it pushes everything else really nicely without ever, this is never stabbed through a thing. I see a lot of people use chopsticks. I feel like I would stab that chopstick straight through my seam. That's also why I don't use quick unpicks. because they're just not my friend. All right, I'm gonna hit pause and I'm just gonna go and iron all these. Now, because this is velvet, I'm gonna iron the lining side, so I don't want to damage it because that'll suck. Okay, so now that everything has been ironed, I'm going to take the side flaps, so the side pockets, which are the ones where we just did top and bottom, and I just want to top stitch just the top edge. So all of my top stitching, I'm going to use a 3 3/4 seam stitch length, not seam allowance, and I'm going to do a 1/8 seam allowance. I'm also going to back stitch this so it doesn't come undone. Now, you probably won't see it on my bag because it is velvet, so it's got a pile, which means that my stitches are sinking in a little bit, but it's just going to keep that edge nice. So even though I won't see it, I'm still going to do it. And then I'm going to also do the pocket flaps. So I'm going to chop off these. I like chain stitching. When I don't do tutorials, that's pretty much all I do. I chain stitch everything. Alright, so these are also done. So our side pockets, we can now go stick over there where we've stuck our strap because we don't need it for a while. We're going to concentrate on these pieces. So slow and steady on the curves because you want to try and get it as nice and even as possible. So even I slow down, it's fine. Don't feel bad if you've got to slow down. Accuracy is better than speed. Alright, so then those two are done. They can pop over there as well. So now we're up to the main pocket pieces. So there should be 2 of them. So because I'm working on black, I'm going to be using my chalk wheel pen, which are Chaco pens, C-H-A-C-O. These ones are by Birch. Spotlight do sell them, but they're quite often out, which is super annoying. But basically, it's like a pen, but it's got a little wheel that will deposit chalk, and they're amazing. So I'm going to find the center of my pocket piece, and then just mark it at both ends, and then draw that line. So that's our center line where we're going to fold stuff to. Like so. Now I'm going to measure 1 inch each side of the center line. Like so. So now you should have 3 lines. Don't worry about the chalk dust that gets everywhere. It does wipe off with a microfiber cloth or a damp cloth, or probably it's going to end up coming off with my jumper. It doesn't sit in there. It's quite easy to wipe off. And these also work on vinyl. So I did, if you're in my group, you saw that I did a quilted version of this. I actually marked all of my lines with this chalk wheel, and then it just wipes straight off the vinyl. So these side ones that I'm doing are 3/4 of an inch. So now you should have like 5 lines on there. So we're going to do the same thing again. So we're going to grab this one and we're going to find the center. Now off camera, I usually just stand up and use my cutting mat to do all the measurement markingness, but because it's a video, I will sit here and do it. So center line, 1 inch that side, flip it round, 1 inch the other side, and then 3/4 of an inch at each edge. If you make the 3/4 bigger, it just means you'll have deeper pockets. Excellent. So the first thing we're going to do is fold. So with your 3 lines, we're going to fold the 2 outside ones. So I'm just going to take that and pinch it and fold it. And now I'm going to sew along that edge. Now, the reason I marked both of them is because, again, I'm going to chain stitch this. Now, this is one of those ones where you want to get as close to the edge as possible without running off it. So if that means for you 1/8 of an inch, cool. I think I'm doing about a 1/16. And then we're going to get to the top and we are going to back stitch to lock these in. So then I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to pinch, put the crease in, and then stitch. So I always stitch from the bottom up. No real reason, it's just what I like to do. Each to their own, I say. And then back stitch, and then I'm going to chop this one off. And now I'm going to come and do the other side line. So we should still have a center line. We're not going to stitch that center line at all. That's just a marking that we're going to need in a minute. So again, back stitch, stitch as close as you can to the edge, all the way up to the top, back stitch, trim this one off, and then do the same again. So pinch. So to pinch it, I'm sticking my fingers underneath, you can't really see that, and then just folding it each side to pinch it like that. You can iron that crease if you're worried, but I'm stitching it anyway, so it's no big deal. Which is why I've never ironed it. Okay. So now, I'll trim off those tails. So now you've got a piece that looks like this, and it's just got like two weird little bits. So we're going to fold that edge, that sewn edge line, into that center line. So you're going to do this to both sides. And I'm going to pin it at top and bottom. And then I'm going to do the same to the other side. So I'm going to, I'll just see if I can do it in the air. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to bend it to the center so that you can't see that center line. And then again, I'm going to chuck another clip on it. Top and bottom. So I'm going to do this one as well. I'll just pull this out. Normally, again, I would do that one, chain stitch it, do it, chain stitch it. But it's a video, so we won't. So again, we're going to take this one side and bend it into the center. I didn't take my hay fever tablets today. Whoops. I may still have to get up and do that soon, guys. So if I do, I apologize. All right, so then I'm going to bend the other side in as well through that center line. After we're finished stitching it, you can just rub that center line away, but obviously we need it right now, so don't do it yet. Okay, so if you want to, you can press it. So the back of it's going to look like this, and then the front looks quite enclosed. I'm just going to quickly stick my iron on that to help keep it in place. So press that down. Just in the middle part. I'm not going to take my clips off. That's silly. It's just going to squash it a little bit more. Alright, so now we're going to stitch all the way along that top edge. And just so you know, these pockets are the most complicated part of the whole bag. So if you can do this, you've got this bag. The rest of it's just big. So again, we're going to back stitch. And then I'm going to, as I get to the clips, I'm going to remove them slowly. Now this is not that thick, so domestic machines should be fine with it because this has no problems. So even though this is an industrial machine, it's still actually only designed to do clothes. I just do bags on it anyway. So far it hasn't hated me, so it's fine. Alright, so you just go slowly over them so that they don't separate while you're trying to stitch them, because that's obviously not what we want. And then I'm just going to come, and with a 1/8 seam allowance, I'm just going to stitch this bottom just a little bit. Not the whole way along, just where the folds are. Just so that it's going to stay where we want it to. So I'm just doing a 1/8 seam allowance-ness, which is just a basting stitch to hold it all in place. And so now they sit. Yay! And then if you wanted to, you can push on the middle and then they extend out, which is kind of cool. Alright, so rest of the pocket. So now we still have these 3/4 inch lines that you can't see in that camera. So we've just got to do the same thing again. So we're going to fold them over, pinch and bend it, and then stitch down all 4 sides, so on both pocket pieces. So this is going to give us the depth of our pockets. And then again, back stitch. So bend, press with your finger, or the iron if you want to, back stitch. Now the reason we're not worrying about this raw edge down here is because that goes into the seam. So it's not going to be an issue for anybody at home watching going, oh my god, what about that bit? Ta-da! Oh wait, I missed two. Hold on. That's not a ta-da moment at all. I lied. Go do the other sides. Try that again, shall we? Alright, those two are done. Those two are done. Now it's a ta-da moment. Excellent. Ta-da! Right, so now you've got this 3D looking weirdo thing, but they extend out so that you can get more. So now that we're finished, you can rub out that middle line. So depending on what you use, if you use a friction pen, just steam shot it and that'll make that go away. For me, I just have to rub it because it is chalk. And if you do it now, you won't forget to do it later or at all, because I've done that before. People are like, what's this line? I'm like, oh my goodness. Not bad. Okay, so pockets achieved. So now we're going to take back our flat pieces as well, and we're going to grab one of our outside pieces. So I have used on this, so this is obviously the velvet, and then I've used Form Fuse 1600 and then also bag foam, because this is a big bag and I want it to be able to keep its shape. So I use a lot of interfacing. I'm okay with that decision. I don't want it to be floppy, so I use everything I need to use. So now we're going to find the center of this. So I could probably actually just fold it and clip it. If you've watched any of my videos, don't clip with the snippers because you cut your finger and it sucks and it takes forever to heal. I've played that game before. Okay. So now that I can see my center, I'm going to take a ruler, line it up 1 inch over. So I'm going to line up the center with the 1 inch line. And then you just want to check to see what length you made your pockets, because I haven't made this with pockets in a while. So mine have come out at 16 3/4. Not 16, sorry, 6 3/4. Because again, it just depends on what seam allowances you did. So then I just want to go up 6 3/4 and rule my line. And then I'm going to do the same to the other side of that. So I'm going to go 1 inch the other way. And then I'm going to rule the same line. So that is just so when I'm sticking it on, it's going to go on straight because I can't pin this to the center. So by having the line there, I will be able to do it appropriately. So then, if you're really worried, lay your pocket on and mark where it sits. Or you can measure it. So mine is 5 1/4. So then I'm going to go 5 1/4 from that line and then rule the other one. So that is where the pocket pieces are going to sit. Now we're actually stitching this little flappy bit here, because I'm sure you're thinking, why don't I just lay it down? Because it extends out and can change shape and size. It is just way, way easier to mark where it needs to live. And I will mark this on every bag I make, or every one of these bags that I make, because it is not worth, if you stitch it on and you pull one way, your pocket will be crooked. It's not worth the unpicking, trust me. Been there, played that game. Okay, so I always stitch again from the bottom up, and I'm going to move my clip so that I don't knock them all over. And so you can start from wherever. I always like to do right to left so that I don't rub out any of my lines. So I'm just going to I'm going to pull out this last flap, and I'm going to stitch 1/8 of an inch, but I'm going to line that up on that mark that I've just done. So I'm going to go down to a 2.5 stitch length as well, because this is a joining stitch. We are joining the pieces together, so therefore I use a shorter stitch length. And when I get to the top, I'm just going to back stitch. And then pull that out, trim it off. So then, as you can see, I don't know, you probably can't see, hold on. As you can see, the pocket sits naturally bigger because of this extended part. So we have to use the markings so that it'll sit where we need it to. So I'm just going to pull this whole flap out and then line the other side up with the other side marking. And stitch 1/8 of an inch up that side. So now your pocket's looking weird and it's sitting funny, but I promise that is normal. Please don't freak out. So then I'm going to do the next pocket. Keeping all my tails of stuff over there. I will trim off all of those tails once I've done all of this. And then the last side. So as you can see, my bag's getting too far, so I'm just going to fold it over. It will naturally fold where the sewing lines are because they're like little creases for the foam. Fantastic. So now we can just, these side bits, you actually fold onto itself to get that flat look. See, and then the pockets actually fit fine. So I'm going to take some clips and I'm going to clip them there. And then I'm just going to chuck one in the middle for good measure. It's less strain on the clips then. So I'm going to put 3 clips. So again, I'm going to fold that onto itself, clip it down. So long as you've measured all of this well, this should all work out for you. See? Beautiful. I know it doesn't necessarily look beautiful, but it does still need a press. So I'm just going to stitch, again, I'm going to do like a basting stitch along the bottom at a 1/8 seam allowance just to hold all of these pockets down. So when I'm joining it to the gusset piece, it's not going to be a big deal. Little things like this that will make it easier, because trying to pin this down flat evenly as well as then trying to attach the gusset piece, it's just too much, and that's when you get errors. Whereas if I do this now it's done. And I can just treat that as one normal piece. Alright, so now we go and strip off all of the dangly bits. Like that. Oh, look, we're getting there. So this is the busiest side, by the way. So I'm doing this one first because the other one's really quick. So now I measure 1.5 inches up from the top edge, and I'm going to rule another line with my chalk wheel pen. All the way across. Again, it's erasable, so it doesn't matter. So then we're going to take our flat pieces and we're going to put them in line with our pocket, but with the right sides touching each other. So we're going to see the red. So what this is going to do is this is going to line them up so the pockets will be even. And we're going to stitch this so that we won't see that raw edge. So I'm just lining them up just like 1 or 2 millimeters, which is like, I don't know, 1/16. Just past the line so that I stitch on the line, and then I'm going to hide the raw edge. So again, I'm still using 2.5 stitch length. I'm going to do a couple of stitches forward at the start, couple back, and then stitch all of that down. And then when I get to there, at the end of that one, I'm going to back stitch. I don't keep stitching because I don't want to see these lines. And then I'm just not going to trim it, but I'm going to go over to the other one because I can trim that later. That's fine. Couple forward, couple back. And stitch that down. Come on, snippers. So now I'm going to trim that center line out of the way. And then any excess you've got here, you can trim off. I'll grab these scissors for that. So you can just bend it so it sticks up and then just trim it off. You want to get nice and close to those stitches because we don't want this to poke out of the next bit. In a perfect world, you won't need to do this, but I need to every time. Such is life. I rush too much. Okay, so now we fold the pockets down, and then we're going to top stitch 1/4 inch from the top. So we're doing that whole quarter so that we're going to definitely hide all of this, and it's going to hold the flap down. So it's not going to, at the moment, they just hang up. So I'm still using 2.5. I'm not going to do the bigger one. So I'm going to do a full 1/4 inch, which is the width of my foot. And I'm just going to make sure that that's all the way smoothed down. Couple of stitches forward, couple back, and stitch that down. And then the same with this side. I'm just going to push that down. I'm just going to lift this up and bring it over to the other side. Couple forward, couple back. Stitch all the way along and back stitch. And so now, apart from adding the straps that we haven't made yet, that piece is done. Excellent. So that's a whole piece done. So now we've got open, and then you can stick your hand in, and they technically close at the bottom. So they are a complete pocket. They're just not neat at the bottom. So chuck that piece aside. That's done for now. And now I'm going to grab one of my outside pockets. So this one's got Form Fuse 1600 of it, and then this one's just got the non-woven medium lining. So we're going to put them right sides together and just stitch along that top edge. Now the bigger seam allowance you do, the shorter your pocket will be. So I tend to just do 1/4 to 3/8 depending on what I'm feeling. And then I'm just going to fold that over. Actually, I might trim that off. So fold that over and then top stitch along that same edge. You can iron it if you want to. I plan on just finger pressing it as I go. And I'm doing 1/4 inch from the top. You could do it closer if you wanted to. It's just, I don't see my stitches. 1/4 inch is easier because it's the edge of my foot. So that's how quick the slip pocket is. So now we're going to grab our other side. And then before we start, we're going to fold it in half and find the center because we're going to need that later. And it's easier to do it now rather than later. So I just fold the whole thing in half, make like a little dent, and chop off a tiny little corner. Make sure that your corner is tiny so it's going to be within the seam allowance. So that's for later. We don't actually need to know why the center's there now, unless you want to do a center pocket. I actually never do a center pocket. I do like an off-centered pocket. That's just me though, because some people have bigger books that they'd like to slip in. So I do a big one and then a little one that'll just fit kind of your phone. So it's like 2/3 of the way across, I guess. So I'm going to start at the pocket, make sure I backstitch, and then just stitch to the bottom. Lots of people do the center pocket. You could also, if you wanted to, add a magnetic snap there and have it as a magnetic pocket. I'm not doing that. So now I'm just going to stitch within the seam allowance and stitch all of the edge down. And again, we're doing this so that later it will be easier to sew together and we've got less pieces to deal with. And I keep running off the edge. So there you go. That's that side done. And I know a lot of people will be like, you make it look so easy, but it was only 3 pieces of fabric. You've got this. All right. What have we got? Let's go on to our gusset. So you should have 2 outside pieces. Now I don't put foam in my gusset. That's something that a lot of people do. And the main reason I don't is because I think it makes it too bulky and I can't deal. So I just make sure it's got a stiff interfacing. Normally I would also do the gusset out of a vinyl, which will give it a little bit extra. You can do it with foam, but I suggest you take off, like, I don't know, make the foam less so that it's easier to sew. Now somewhere here I have a giant piece of zip. I don't know, but you should have 2 gusset pieces and 2 lining pieces. With my gusset pieces with the fabric, I cut one that way and then flip it over so that the pattern, when I stitch it together, is all going in the same direction. So this is actually how I cut it. I cut the straight edge back to back. So the pattern lines up now, but obviously I still need to put a seam allowance. But it just means that the pattern is going the same way. If yours is non-directional, I feel like that probably doesn't matter. All right, I'm gonna hit pause while I try and find this zip. Okay, found my zip. It was right next to me, whatever. So, I'm going to take one of each of the pieces, and I'm gonna do this in the same way I make a Maisie by Swoon. So I'm just gonna line that up. It doesn't matter what piece you grab, you've already cut it to be the right way. So I'm just going to line all 3 pieces up and stitch it down. Now if you want to, you can clip it or pin it or whatever. I will be pinning the second side. I never pin the first. Things just work out for me on the first one. So I just keep readjusting it as I go, and then I'll stop there, make sure the needle's down, readjust the zip, and off I go again. And then back stitch. And so then I'm going to twist this around and I'm going to fold just the top piece over onto that seam that I've just done, and then I'm going to top stitch it 1/8 of an inch from the edge. So the main reason for this top stitch is not just to look pretty, but it will also hold the bag out. It gives it a little bit more firmness at the zip, which means it's not going to sag. Highly recommend top stitching. And perfect timing, I just ran out of bobbin thread on that bobbin. Wow, I'm pruning through the thread today. So this is my last bobbin. I am most likely going to need another one. It's fine. They weren't full. First one was only half, so that's right. All right, so now I'm just going to finger press this down out of the way. You can iron it if you want to as well, that's fine. And then we're going to attach the other side. Now that's the wrong way. I do clip this side together because that whole piece of fabric's now in the way. So what I do is I clip the lining to the zip, and then I'll come back and add in the third piece because it's quicker for me to clip 2 pieces and then add a third rather than trying to line up 3 pieces. So now that I've clipped that together, I can treat that as 1 piece. And then I just lay this on top and open the clips and realign it again. So that for me is the easiest way, but you don't have to do it that way. If you can do 3 pieces at once, by all means go ahead. If you can line this up without clipping it, do that. I, however, cannot. Not accurately anyway. It's always just like 1/4 inch out. Not ideal. Alright. back stitch at the start, stitch down. So my foot is just running along the edge of that zip. If your machine uses a wide foot, I would suggest putting a zipper foot on to prevent that. All right, so again, we're just going to bend over just the top piece and then top stitch at 1/8 of an inch or whatever you choose to do. And then I'm just finger pressing it as I go because I don't really want to iron the velvet. I haven't burnt it yet, but I don't want to because then I have to unpick everything. Okay. Trim off your tails. Now we're going to put our zips on. We'll do them now so that I don't forget. So I'll bring the zipper jig over. So my husband made me a zipper jig, if you've never watched one of my videos. It is a clamp with a fork attached to it. So that will hold my zipper for me. Oh, move that out of the way. Sorry, that's my overlocker poking in. There we go. Alright, so we just split the zip a little bit and then we feed both sides in evenly. Which takes practice, but you'll get there. And then we're going to do the same to the other end. So put the zip on. Now some people put the zip in upside down. It's a personal preference. I don't like doing that, so I don't. And then you just want to make sure when they meet in the middle that they don't have a big lump. Because that just means that one side of your zipper is looser than the other. So you just take off one zipper head and then readjust and realign. But mine look good. So that's what we're doing. And then I'm just going to roll this over and I'm just going to finger press both of these open so that they don't give me grief later. You can iron it if you want to. I never do. Whatever. Alright, so now we're going to take our lining piece. Now I do the lining piece first because it's lighter, which means it's theoretically easier. Now, your piece, if you've used the exact measurements of the pattern, your piece is going to be a little bit wider where the zippers went in on that piece. That's okay. If you're making MDF templates, take off a 1/4 inch from that side and that'll solve that problem. So now I'm just going to stitch 1/2 inch down and I'm going to stitch up to, but not over, the zipper. So you want to get pretty close, but you don't want to stitch over it because everything's bent there and that's bad. So I've just stitched like half. Then I'm going to fold all of this over to the other side and do the same thing. Now I always like to stitch out to in, so I will be continuously flipping this on you guys. You can feel the zip, so you just don't want to stitch over it. So that's that side done. So you've just got like this little gap. That is fine. Then we're going to do the same to the other end. So make sure that your pieces aren't twisted. And then line them up. And again, if they're too big, just do it in the center. Mine are too big because I forgot to get hubby to take off that little bit extra. And the reason that it doesn't fit perfectly is because we're not doing a drop-in lining. If we just do the drop-in lining and fold it all back the way it wants us to, it would fit because the pattern is glorious. I don't know, don't like to follow rules, I guess. Alright, so back stitch, stitch along, up to the zip, but not over it. So that one was the easy side. So now we're going to do the vinyl side. So I have interfaced my entire vinyl piece with a Form Fuse 1600. If you wanted like a super heavy base, you could put a big piece of plastic or Peltex right in the center. Whatever makes you happy, it's your bag. Alright, so now again, I'm going to line this up And I'm going to clip this one because it's heavier and it's more likely to move on me. So I will actually throw some pins into this, or clips, not pins. Don't pin vinyl or leather. Once you stab the hole, very hard to get rid of. You got to like melt it and push the vinyl back into space. And then you usually get a fingerprint in it. It's not ideal. Just buy Wonder Clips. They're pretty cheap. All right, so again, 1/2 inch, back stitch. We only want to go up to the zip. We don't want to go over it because we still have to add in our little tabs that we stitched ages ago. See, because I remember them because I did it at the start. Right, so then we're going to do the other side. So again, if you can't eyeball 1/2 inch, you can either rule it and draw a line, or you can get one of those cool little magnetic things that sit here so you can butt the fabric up against it, or you can mark your plate with a permanent texter. But the permanent texter will eventually come off, so just be conscious of that. It might wreck some projects. Okay. Same with this side. Half an inch. Whoops. And that was because I didn't leave enough of a tail of my machine. Apparently I'm supposed to hold it every time I stitch something. I obviously don't do that. I just make sure, usually I make sure that there's enough. So with the industrial machines, you're meant to hold it like this and then stitch so that it can't fall through. Making sure we're back stitching everywhere. Back stitching is very important. Alright, flip it over. Do the other side. Okay. How'd we go? Good. Okay, so now you should have this weird gap at the base there. You're meant to have this gap, so don't freak out. You're going to take your little D-ring and shove it through the hole. Like so. So the best way to do this is to center it up with your zip. So those two little lines that we did earlier should pretty much line up perfectly with the zipper teeth. And so that's how you know it's in the center. And then we're going to use 2 clips to hold it in place. And so then we make sure that all 4 of these little flaps are together and flat. And then we're going to stitch the gap shut. I'll move that so you can see. So we're going to do a couple of back stitches, and then we're going to go slowly over this because this is now 4 layers of vinyl, 2 layers of form fuse, 2 layers of the velvet, the zipper tape, and then all the lining as well. So you just want to go nice and slowly so you don't snap a needle, because I have snapped many a needle doing this. And then instead of trying to back stitch, because it won't work and you will snap a needle, we're actually going to go back, and I'm just going to go on a slight bit of an angle and stitch within the seam allowance. So I'm stitching about 1/8 of an inch away. So this zigzagging motion is just giving us extra strength, because that little tab is going to take the whole weight of the bag when you're carrying it on the shoulder strap. So I have stitched over and then zigzag back and then lock stitched it in, or back stitched it, whatever you'd like to call it. Okay, so then we're going to grab our other one and do the same to the other side. And then that's our gusset done too. Outside's done, gusset done. Next up, we're doing the lining, and then we're just constructing it. If you break it down into steps, like if you don't have a whole day to sit and make a bag, break it into steps. Do all the outside pieces, so the pockets and everything, and then walk away. And then the next day, make this part. And then the next day, do your lining, and then the last day, construct it. I actually find the construction part is the most time-consuming part of all. You just want to make sure everything lines up, and you got to put a lot of clips in. All right, so I've gone over, and then I'm going to zigzag back out about 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to run all the way off the vinyl tab part. If you've got a domestic machine and you're worried about the thickness of this, instead of using vinyl, use interface fabric. That will work just as well. So do like a nice woven interfacing on a nice thick whatever. Okay, so now we've got this funky looking double loop. This is what it's meant to look like. So now's the time, now that we've stitched the edges shut, open your zip up so you don't have to think about it later. Okay. So while we've got this, we're going to find the center of everything. So I'm going to line up, actually, and while I'm here, this little excess bit that I've got, I'm going to trim it off on like an angle. I'm not just going to cut it out. That'll make the bag look weird. So you should just have this little bit of excess. You just want to trim that off. So I'm just trying to taper it out as needed. And then we're going to do the same to the other end. This is just going to help with construction later, but while we're making this piece, we may as well do it now. Taper it out, chop it off. Then we'll go find the center of everything. Excellent. So now, all of these edges match. So to find the center, we're going to join seam to seam and then just go out and pinch it, and that's the center there. So we're just going to do a little trim mark. This will be the easiest way to put the bag together later. So if we do it now, we don't have to come back and trim everything later. So we're going to do the same with the top. So I'm going to pinch it, and then I'm going to trim the outside, and I'm going to trim the lining as well, but I'm going to trim them separately, like so. If I had done one big cut, that actually would have ended up outside of my seam allowance, and I would have wrecked the piece. We don't want to do that. So, line that up. Basically just pull your finger in and then pinch, because that's where that is. That's the center there. And then just our lining piece here. So line the seams up, pinch, fold, trim. Turn it around, do the other side. Line it up, pinch, fold, trim. Okay, so that's now all my centers on all of that, so that can go aside for later as well. Now we're going to do our lining. So I am doing one slip pocket like I did for the outside, and I'm doing one zippered pocket. So I'm going to start with my slip pocket because it's the quickest. So I'm just stitching 1/4 inch from the top. Like so. Trim off my tails. Open it out. So I'm just going to finger press that away. And then pinch it over. That's the best way to do that without having to stand up and use the iron, although feel free to do that if you want to. Just saves me a little bit of time doing it like that. And then I'm top stitching that, obviously, so it stays together. Still nice, neat, whatever word you'd like to use. And then I'm going to grab one of my that with my scissors. Grab one of my lining pieces and then line it up along the bottom. Like so. Now for the lining, I do 3 pockets. So I'm going to do 2 lines because I know they're using this as a baby bag, so it's probably more handy to have separate pockets. So I'm just gonna do approximately a third. I can eyeball a third really well, apparently, so no. That's got a knot. I can see that. It's having a moment. So that, I don't know what happened there, but my machine didn't want a backstitch, so it chose to have a meltdown instead. If you struggle with backstitching, do 3 holes, so stitch forward 3, and then just lift up and go back through those same 3 holes. So like this, you go 1, 2, 3, and then lift up, pull it back, and go back through that first hole. It's the same thing. Yeah, I don't very often backstitch on my big industrial heavy looking machine. I just do that because I like it better. Alright, so then I'm going to put my other one there. So 1, 2, 3, back through the first bit. So what that does is that locks the stitches so they can't come undone. Okay, so that is another side of the bag done. But before we put it aside, actually, I'm going to stitch this edge. I'm using like a 1/8 seam allowance. It's just basting everything in place. So again, I'm then just dealing with one piece later. And you may think that this is a waste of thread, but I promise, if you miss this corner while you're stitching, you're gonna have to unpick it, and corners are difficult. Like, this is a big bulky bag. You don't want to have to restitch if you don't need to. Trust me. Alright. So now it's one piece. Nothing flops around anywhere. So I'm going to fold it in half. Pinch it. And mark the center. So you just want the center of all pieces. And the reason I didn't do it at the start is because I still had to add those other pieces. And I didn't want it to hide my center mark. And then I'd have to do it twice. So that's another piece done. Last piece, ladies and gentlemen. And then we're up to construction. I don't know how long we've been going. I'm not wearing my watch today. Alright. So, my pocket piece is what my normal pocket piece is times 2. So it is, I just make this up. I've got a template, so I folded the fabric in half and went around it. So this one is 12 by 16. I'm doing a bigger pocket, obviously, because it's a bigger bag than the handbags. But yeah, I have an acrylic rectangle that I use for all my pocket piecingness. So I'm now going to mark the same way I always do. So 1/2 inch down from the fold, 3/4 of an inch in from that edge, and then same with the other end. And I really need to buy a new ruler. It's losing all its markings. And then I'm going to do 3/8 of an inch down from there. Now, if you're in Australia and you're wondering why I keep speaking in inches, the answer is simple. All rulers come in inches. I think you can get like one very crazy expensive centimeter ruler, but they're hard to find and they're expensive, so. I have taught myself to just deal with inches. And a lot of the bag patterns come in inches, not centimeters as well. Alright, so I'm just going to center that up. Now, the way I do that, you're going to think this is lazy. I don't care. I use my hands. I put it at the edge of the fabric. And I check to see if it's in the middle. And that might sound ridiculous, but I've never had a complaint. Nobody's ever been like, oh, your pocket's crooked. Because it's not. Alright, so 2.5 stitch length. Stitch around the box. I don't know if you can see this because it is quite a dark fabric, although it looks a lot lighter on camera than in the... This is like a maroon. So stitch along your box. Needle down, pivot. I haven't mentioned that yet, although I haven't done a zipper pocket yet. So whenever you're turning a corner or stopping to adjust something, always have your needle in the down position. It will prevent you having anything slip and move and then distorting your beautiful sewing, because we don't want to do that. This bag is a lot of effort. You don't want to botch it. All right, so I'm just going to fold that over. Not those scissors, they're the zipper scissors. And I do a little snip in the center of that box or the rectangle. And then I'm just going to trim down the center till I get about 1/2 inch from the end. And then I'm just going to cut into the corners, which will make a very cute little triangle. And we're going to do the same to the other end. Again, triangle out the corners. So for anybody that's never seen my video, it's a little triangle. So you want to try and get as close to those stitches that you've just done as possible without snipping them. So then I've just pushed the pocket through the nail hole, and I'm going to start with my edges and I'm going to roll them out and finger press them so that they're nice and flat. Then you just come along and I'm going to pinch this and I'm going to score it with my finger or fingernail. If you've got awesome fingernails, you can score along there. I don't. To be fair, I don't look after them. I don't chew them, but they just break. Such is life. So again, finger press along there. You can iron this if you want to. I've actually got my iron on, so I might quickly just hit that with an iron. If you've got a steam iron, hit it with a shot of steam so it's going to sit nicely. I have a steam iron, but I didn't turn the steam on because the iron makes way too much noise for you guys. And so then we need a 12-inch zip. So that's going to go in the hole. And yes, I'm aware that my hole is less, but I want to capture these raw ends in the seams that I stitch. Otherwise, you'd have to put end caps on, like we do in the Juniper toiletry bag. All right, so I always like my zips to go from left to right. Obviously, that didn't matter on the top piece because I used 2 zips. If I wasn't using 2 zips, I would have thought about which way the direction sits and then made the pattern go from left to right. I just thought 2 zips was a good idea because it is, you know, a giant baby bag and you do want to be able to get into this bag easily. So 2 zips is definitely ideal. All right, so I've done my 3 manual hand cranks, mainly with the machine off just so you guys don't have to listen to it whir. I am going to start looking into finding a different motor for my machine so that it doesn't make noise during all my videos, but I assume it's going to be expensive and I can't afford it anytime soon anyway. But I'm adding it to my wish list of things I'd like in life. So I'm just stitching around. Basically, I'm running the edge of my foot against the zipper tape. So it's stitching nice and close. And then I'm going to get to here and I'm going to have the needle down and zip it back up out of my way. And the reason we move the zipper is because otherwise it will distort your stitches and you'll just like be sewing along and then have this little bump bit where the zipper was sitting while you were stitching. So don't do that. Take the time, move the zipper. Alright, so I'm trimming off those back tails and apparently throwing them on the floor. It's fine. And then I'm just going to stitch down both sides of my zipper. So I'm going to leave the bottom open because that will be one of the last seams that I do. Okay, and then we're going to do the other side. So I'm probably doing about a 1/2 inch seam along there. It's obviously less than 3/4 because that's where my snip was. It doesn't really matter so long as you are capturing that zipper tape in that seam when you do it, anything's fine. So that is now the zipper pocket done. Mine ended up being 2.5 inches from the top, but you can eyeball it and stick it wherever. It's all fine. Now I'm just going to check my bobbin My bobbin is empty. I knew it would be. Played bobbin chicken and a 1. So I just need to wind another bobbin. And then we're going to do the handles. So this bag, I'm going to have both a shoulder strap and handles, because not everybody wants to stick it over their shoulder all the time. Sometimes you just want to pick it up. This bag also, while I'm doing this, I'll give you some stuff. I have made a lot of these for myself and my husband. My husband uses it as his work bag. I made a grey one. It's got a cool skull embroidered on the front of it. I also made us matching ones that he didn't want to use out of an upholstery weight skull fabric that I have. So they are perfect size for carry-on on aeroplanes. Well, in Australia, I don't know about elsewhere. Now, just on the off chance that I still run out of thread, I'm going to wind a second one, because I really don't want to run out again. And while we're here, we may as well just do it. Yeah, so this is what I used as my baby bag, and now it is my child's like overnight bag. If we were to like go somewhere, I will pack that. I take it on the plane for him. So he's got one made out of dinosaurs. It is very cute. So I love this pattern. I make a lot of them. This bag is for one of the ladies that lives on base with me. She loves Harry Potter and is planning a trip soon, now that restrictions are starting to lift. So she wanted a Harry Potter one with maroon. So I did a deep, deep red vinyl. As you can see it. I don't need to explain what color it is. We're literally making it. Okie dokie. Rethread my machine. You'll also notice just there, if you've never watched my video, I don't thread all of this part. It's time consuming. So what I do is I just leave thread in and then tie the new one to it and pull it through. And it's only ever not worked once. Once my knot didn't hold, but I chopped it before I pulled it through. So that was my bad. Anyway, it's my fault. Okay. I can turn my iron off. We don't need it now. I can hear it ticking in the background, which means you can hear it. So I've already put the center line in, as you can see, in red, because I did it while I was cutting. And my straps, I decided I want to do them 20 inches. I don't want them too long, but I also don't want them too short. And I find 20 inches is quite a nice length for this bag. These ones I am doing are only 4 inches wide, which means they will make a 1-inch strap. 1 1/4 is also a nice width to hold. I probably wouldn't go too much thicker than that, because then it's too thick for your hand and it becomes awkward to hold. So like 2-inch straps on this bag, it would just be too thick and you'd end up crushing them, which is going to wreck the look of the bag. And again, I missed a little bit. And while you may look at that and be like, why did I just chop that off? That is nothing. It will distort the folding. That's why we have to rule things. Accuracy is key. So that little bit would have made the end of my strap just kick out a little bit. Or twist it, and then we get that twisty look, which we don't like. Alright, so I'm just folding this to the center line, like I always do. And I also do all vinyl handles on this bag, because the handles will get a lot of, let's say, bashing. They will get used a lot. And all fabric, I don't think will survive. They'll eventually get screwed up and they won't look as nice. They'll also get dirty. So you think having a kid, you're going to have to just sometimes pick it up and go. Your hands are still going to be dirty. So vinyl is quite easy to clean. So that's why, obviously this is not a baby bag. This is for a lady going on holiday. But the principle still remains. This would be a great beach bag. Actually, if you were making this as a beach bag, what I would do is I'd stick like a couple of little eyelets in the bottom to allow water and sand to drain out. That would be smart. Or make it out of mesh. This bag would be really fun if you just made it out of mesh. I will actually, you know what? I will try and find some mesh. It's hard to find in Australia, but I will try and find some mesh and make this bag out of mesh with binding on my other machine because I think it's going to be cool. I don't live near the beach, but my friend does, so I could just send her the bag. Alright, so again, 1, 2, 3 holes. Lift up the foot, lift up the needle, go back into the first hole. So I'm on a 3 3/4 stitch length because we want it a little bit more decorative. And then I'm just going to fold it in half as I go. My machine's making a noise. I just want to make sure. See, something got caught back at the start. I did hear that. I can fix that later, that's fine. Also, those ends, you don't really need to worry about the ends because they get sewn into the bag. This bag is not attaching the handles via strap connectors. So they just go into the seam. So we don't really care about the ends anyway. As you can see, I just skipped the end. Pulled it completely out and just go again. I am still going to backstitch though because I don't want it to come undone. Not that I think that it will, but it's just a habit that I have. Very few things will I not backstitch. That ends one, but I'm also not going to trim off that other piece. So this little loop here, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm not trimming that. That will just go into the bag. Therefore, I'm not going to backstitch. And I'm doing a 1/8 seam allowance for anybody at home that's wondering. Okay, so now I have my beautiful handles. You know what else we forgot to attach? When I say we, I mean me. These little poppies. So we're going to take our gusset piece. We're going to put our handles aside. We don't need them yet. I just wanted to stitch them while I had a nice full bobbin. Alright, so we need to put on our pockets on the side. Now the reason I do them now is because I like to line them up. So now that I've got this edge, hold on, how am I going to do this and show you? Alright, I'll stand up, that's how. So now that this is all stitched nicely, what we're going to do is we're going to take the pocket piece and we're going to line that up so that this top edge is in line with that join. So that we're not over, because we don't want to damage the pocket by it being constantly worn against this. So I'm going to line it up with the vinyl like this, and then I'm going to pin it down. So you just want to make sure that you're not pinning the other lining in with it. So I'm just going to line that up like this, grab some clips, clip it on, like so. And I'm going to clip both of them on and then I'll stitch them both. So we're going to stitch down, across and up. So that again, so that this side, it doesn't necessarily matter about the side, but I promise it's going to make it easier when we're trying to stitch our outside on. Alright, so again, I'm going to line that up along that seam, like so, and then clip it down. So I'm not using a lot of clips, I'm only probably doing 3 each side, I think. So we don't want to see the vinyl, but we still want to be able to see our D-ring. And the reason for that is why I explained before. We don't want it to wear down the fabric by constantly rubbing. So now it sits out. So I'm going to use a joining stitch length, so my 2.5. So the sides I'm going to do at a 1/8 seam allowance, and I'm also going to back stitch this so that it stays locked in. Because the sides are just stitching down so that it doesn't move while we're trying to stitch it. But the bottom I'm going to do also at 1/8 from the edge. Slow and steady wins the race. Now, if you're really worried that your stitching won't hold because you're using like a lighter weight stitching or something, you can go back and do a second line. It won't affect the structure of the bag, but it will potentially help any issues that you think might have with that pocket. Although they're not that big, so I can't imagine what bulky things they're going to shove in there anyway. And this thread is insanely tough, so I'm not worried. This, for whoever is in Australia and watching, it's Mavardnum thread. I'm obsessed. I am progressively buying all the colours. I'm just buying like a few at a time. It turns out they sell them on eBay. So Vardnum Threads is on eBay. I saw them the other day. They come up. I was like, huh. So I'm using the bonded nylon because this guy said that it would be better for bags than bonded polyester. And I am inclined to believe him because he knows what he's talking about. That's why we ask the expert things. Alright, so that is now stitched down. Nice and neat along the bottom. And that is now an effective pocket. So we did that now just because it's going to be easier. Now I will always attach the lining first for many, many reasons. Let me just move this out of my way. Alright, you can't see that, but it's my overlocker holding like this. But the overlocker one, it keeps getting in my way. So it doesn't really matter which pocket you put on first. But I'm going to leave a gap in the bottom of this one. So because I want to leave a gap, I want to try and remember. So I will always do that piece first, just to make sure that I remember. Because if I forget and I sew all the way along the bottom, I can still put the gap in the other piece. It's just a little bit harder to do up. So I've measured it in the middle. So basically I just had to join up all my middle lines that I've already made before. That's why we do them. And I always have my clips facing the gusset. So the gusset will be up. I've only put one in the middle and that was just to center it. Now I'm going to take that clip off. Because if I don't see clips, I won't sew. Theoretically anyway. It's worked for me in the past. I will do this on the table or attempt to. I usually always clip it in my hand and in my lap. So here, because I find it easier. But we'll do it on the table. So we have to remember this is a 3D object. So I'm pushing this into the corner as if it were a 3D object. Like that. So I'm just going to do 3 clips on each end and then I'm going to twist it around and I'm going to come to the top. So I'm going to match my center clip lines because we're clever, and I'm going to make my clips face the gusset piece because that is the way that I will be stitching it. So I'm going to do a couple across there. I'm doing all the straight parts first because then we've got to ease the curves into the rest of it. That looks good. So I've got half my top and this is obviously the gap that I'm leaving. So now I'm going to come back to one side. Oops. And I'm going to pull it out so that I can see. I need one more clip. So I need to fit that much fabric into that much space. So we're going to hold it and push it as the 3D object that it is. And this might sound confusing, but basically I'm just pulling the gusset side up higher kind of than the lining and then clipping it down. So that doesn't necessarily look like it's going to fit in there, but I promise it will. I just might struggle because it's not on my lap, but we'll see. Alright, so once we turn that into a 3D object like so, these little bits here won't matter if they're a little bit wrinkled because that will be in the seam allowance. So the fact that you've got wrinkles in the corner is actually a good thing, because when we tug that down and put that in like that, lots of clips to hold it in place, but you won't necessarily stitch them. So all my wrinkles are actually further down than my seam allowance, which is exactly what you want. I'm just going to clip up the sides. Now, also another thing, these little tab bits, you always want them to be facing towards the bottom. So I always clip them down. That's just another little thing. So I'm clipping up to where the pocket joins, and then the rest of this space, I'm going to have to do it from my lap because it's much quicker. I'm just going to push that in and under like so. And while you don't think it fits, if you see that, there's very little actual, you can't really see it, there's very little actual wrinkles. Cool. So now, that is that whole piece clipped with like a crap ton of pins. So I'm going to start from where my pins or my clips start, so that I'm leaving that gap. We're using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And so then we're just going to maneuver around that edge, like so. When I get to there, I've lifted my foot to make sure that my seam there is facing down. I don't want it to accidentally come up. That's not what we're doing. And we're just slowly stitching around that bend. Oops, missed the bend. So this side will be easier for that little tab bit because we're already stitching in a downward motion, so it should just fall into place for you. Last little bit of corner. So the reason we're leaving the bottom of this bag so open is because that's where we'll turn it for the bulk. It's just gonna make it so much easier. Alright, so me and my zigzag scissors or pinking shears are gonna go to town on these corners. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's not sitting flat. Doesn't need to be, but we're just going to trim it off. So that then it will sit flat. Now we don't want to take off any seam allowance off the top, and if you've watched my Maisie video, you know why. If you haven't watched my Maisie video, that's okay, I'm going to show you when we get to it. So again, we're going to come and we're going to chop off all this excess at the bend. Cutting this off will actually help the bag sit flatter inside, because this bulk is not interrupting it. So then I'm going to take some straight, just normal scissors and just trim down the rest of it. I use the zigzag scissors on the curves because it's a good idea. It's instead of having to go along and clip it so that it bends, but the straight bits, you can just trim it off. So I'm only doing the two sides. I'm not doing the top and the bottom. So I'm not doing the bottom because it's open, and I'm not doing the top because we need it later. Okay, so that is technically one side in. Now we're going to take our other side, which I have not yet found the centers for. It's the only one I didn't do. If I had forgotten to do my little gap in the bottom, at least now I would have had a second chance. But it's always easier to stitch it up when it's not on the same side as the pocket you're pulling it through. So if I was pulling this edge through, it is a lot more difficult than doing the other side. So that's why I do it that way. So if you can, it is advised. All right, so my top and my top. I'm going to line that up and clip it. I have no idea how long this video's gone for, so I'm sorry guys if it's dragging on, but it's a big bag with lots of steps. Alright, so I've done the whole top bit along there. Now I'm going to switch, oops, that one come off. That's not good. It's supposed to be one of my good clips. How rude. We'll do a second one just to be sure. So then this bottom we can completely seal up. So we're going to measure out or match up the bottom clip lines. And then again, we're making sure that our clips are facing the gusset piece. All right, into my lap, because it's easier to fold it as a 3D object. So basically, with these two fingers, I grab the corner of both of them, and then I pull that to make it kind of even, I guess. Now, I've got a little mistake here. When I stitch the side pockets down, I've actually grabbed one of these side pockets. So it's not the end of the world. I'm not going to unclip it. I just have to be conscious of it when I'm stitching. So I will actually stitch less seam allowance there because it's going to catch on the outside piece, which is fine. It's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. So it's just going to make it that little bit more difficult. Apparently I like to give myself a challenge on a challenging bag, but whatever. So yeah, that will actually be stitched to the outside piece, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because it just means it's going to keep holding it out for us. And then we're just maneuvering that fabric into that last little corner. And then clipping it down with lots and lots of clips. Awesome. All right. See, I didn't do it to the other side, so we're fine. So this side over here, it's not attached. So again, I'm going to grab it with my two, I don't know, pointy fingers. And then pull to try and evenly distribute all of that excess. And then from there, that is where that will clip together. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's how I do it. Because if you just start in one corner and go all the way around, I promise it won't work. Never does. And then people get frustrated that it doesn't fit. The answer is it does. You just gotta, you know, maneuver it a little bit. You do use a lot of clips. So if you don't have this many wonder clips, do it in sections. So stitch the top, stitch the bottom, then do one side, then go back and do the other. That's not the end of the world if you have to do it like that. Work with what you've got. So if you don't have a gazillion clips like I do it in sections. Or if the bag's becoming overwhelming, because we have been going for a while, and this is a very big bag with lots of parts. So if you're getting a bit overwhelmed, just leave it. Come back to it another time. Go and do something quick and simple, like a wallet, or a nappy wallet, or a, I don't know, tea cozy. Whatever makes you happy. I don't drink tea. If I did, I would totally make tea cozies. Alright, so now we've got lots of stitches. So because I've got that issue at the side, that's actually where I'm going to start. So normally I would start on the bottom and work my way around, but because I know I'm gonna not be able to do all of here, I'm gonna start here and then stitch around the bend. So I'm just, so gusset side is down, up. So the actual panel piece is down, and so the gusset is up so that I can see what I'm doing with ease. So now that I'm on the straight, I'm going to make sure my needle's down, and then I'm going to lift that foot and readjust all of this so that it's straight. because then I can just quickly sew. If I'm constantly fighting with the bag, it's going to take me longer. And I can tell I'm getting up to a corner because I've got a lot of clips again. So I'm going to adjust. So I'm just going to keep pushing all of this out of my way, basically. If it's not in my way, I can't stitch it. Again, I'm going to make sure that this little tab piece here is pointing down. And then I'm going to, again, just keep rolling the bag around on itself to be out of your way while you're trying to sew. It's not going to damage it at all, throwing it around like that. I actually think I sew this quicker on video than off camera. I get sidetracked off camera. Alright, so I didn't join, I got this little gap right there. That's because it's attached to that. But when I'm sewing the outside piece on, it's going to get caught because it has to, because it's already caught. So that doesn't matter. So now technically, if you wanted to, you can look in your bag and you have a bag. It won't stand up by itself because it's the lining pieces, but it is still a bag. Alright. Grab an outside piece and grab a strap. Now, you can do this however you want, but the side where the joint is, so on the strap there's that side where I folded it in, and then there's like a nice outside one. I always put the single fold to the outside of the bag, so this join will be on the inside. Personal preference, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. And I'm going to work out where to put my straps according to my ruler. So when I line this up, it's about 16 inches. Obviously not perfectly, it has no corners. I like to do 3 inches in from each end. I'm not even sure what the pattern says. I haven't checked the pattern on the handles in a very long time. So you could probably just follow what that says. But I do mine at 3 inches because that's just what I like. They're not too close together. They're not too far apart. They're not in the corners annoying me. Because if I had them like out further, it would be annoying trying to do that corner. So 3 inches in. You can do them both now if you want to. Just while we're doing them, I guess. So again, line it up. And I'm using 2 clips to hold it in place because one, it would pivot and then it would potentially be sewn in crooked, which we don't want. You could also look at it as 4 inches out from the center because they are 1 inch straps. Whatever makes you happy. Okay, take our big, horrible looking monstrosity. And we're going to do exactly the same thing as we just did. So I have, this is the top and this is the bottom. And the easy way to tell is because my bottom is vinyl, my top is velvet. It's also got the zip in the top. Just be conscious you don't accidentally put this in upside down because that will suck. The unpicking will suck. The fact you have to re-clip it will suck. Just not a good day. Alright, so I'm going to clip it in the middle. And then I'm going to do, so this is actually going to have more clips than the other side. Because it's stiffer and we're now also trying to fight the bag foam. So I will be putting in a lot more clips on the outside than I will on the inside. So that's just the top. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 across the top. You don't have to exactly put 10, but I'm just making a point. You do need a lot. So then I'm going to line up those bottom clips, and this is why we've already done them. Because trying to fold this bag now that it's like semi-attached, trying to find the center, would suck. I'm not even going to lie. It's going to be awkward and bulky and just painful. So that's why we've pre-measured all of our centers so that we don't have those issues. Because I try and make this bag as simple as I can for myself. And I hate drop-in linings. No offense to drop-in linings, but I just don't like them. I don't like that I can't stitch all the way down, and I hate hand stitching. I actually think that's what it is. I don't like hand stitching. Okay, so now I've got like a crap ton of clips along the bottom. And these are just the straight bits. Wait till we get to the curve. So, again, we're going to grab it with our 2 scissor fingers and then pull that out, and we're going to try and push that in. We want to distribute the excess evenly, and then I want to clip it in the middle. So you can either work up or down, doesn't really matter. We're going to do it all anyway. So then I'm just going to maneuver all of this excess. So again, I don't know if you can see this, but it's actually sitting as the 3D object. So you can see by the shadow that this is actually sitting up and in. It is important to do that. The 3D object. So I'm actually sticking my finger in and pushing that excess out of the way, because I don't want to be, I'm pushing that down with my fingers. So I'm currently rolling it down because I don't want to have wrinkles where I'm stitching, but I know I'm going to have excess fabric. So if I just push all the excess down out of the seam allowance, basically. I don't know if you can see that, but it did fit. Much to, I'm sure, everybody's surprise. So this also is where my join is. So I'm just adding where the gap is in my lining, I've just added that into one clip. So it's going to stitch it shut. And then we're going to do the other side. So I'm going to grab that and I'm going to use these fingers to push it down and in to my 3D-ness. Because if I was trying to hold this as a flat object, I promise it won't fit. It's not a flat object. We're not just sewing 2 straight lines. We're sewing a straight to a curve. So we need to hold it as such. Lots of clips, but that fit pretty effortlessly, to be honest. That was an effortless one. I've had worse. All right, so same again. I'm going to grab my corners with my fingers and then pull till basically the wrinkles in the corner are evenly distributed, because then you know you're in the center. Because you don't want too many at one end, you don't want too many at the other, because that's when you'll get wrinkles in your stitching. So we need some more clips. I have actually nearly emptied my bowl of clips, but I don't care. Worth it. The more clips means the less slippage, which means the neater the sewing's gonna be. So I'm allowing this to have like a few ruffles in my seam allowance, because it's obviously going to. You just want to make sure there's no ruffles further down here. So if you've got ruffles down here, you're going to pinch it and have a little tuck. But if they're just right at the edge, it means it's within your seam allowance and they're fine. So I'm going to show you. I don't know if you can see it because of all the clips, but there is actually quite a lot of ruffles going on in here. But it's within the clippage, so it's fine. So this is now one side. So the bag, without me stitching it, now stands up by itself because of the bag foam with the extra interfacing, because firmness is key. Now, we're going to put the panel down, so we sew with the gusset up, which is why all our clips are gusset up. I'm just going to take out one on a straight bit and then stick it under the machine. So we're going to go slowly because this has actually got quite a lot of all that pocketness, and velvet is thicker than you think. Well, this one is anyway. It's from the furnishing section of Spotlight, so it's like a curtainy kind of one. You'll also notice it was easy to clip the bottom because we pre-tacked all of those pockets down. Now, as I'm stitching, I can see that there's wrinkles on this side, but not in my seam allowance, which means that there won't be wrinkles on the outside when we look. So I'm just going nice and slowly because, again, super bulky. And I've just sewn up that little gap that we had in the lining, so that is now closed and all fixed. Twisting slowly. So this is where your arms can potentially get tired. So I don't know if you heard that, but my machine made, like right now I'm going over the vinyl handle, so it makes a different noise. I'm gonna actually go back and tack over those some more like we did with our side pieces, but I want to keep the flow of my aroundness. That's not even a word. But I want to keep the flow of my current sewing situation going. Whoops. Throwing clips away. I'm still going to need them. I've still got another side to do. Alright, so now I've reached a point where I've accidentally got a wrinkle in my bag. So I've actually managed to flatten it out, and the way I did that was I turned the bag quicker than I was sewing. And it makes it go away. I'm back to the start, so I'm back stitching. And then I'm gonna come straight back up the top, and I'm gonna do that zigzag thing over my handles, because I don't want them to pull out of the bag, because you never know when people are gonna overload a bag, and I don't want my bag to break on them. That will suck. So I'm just doing like some zigzag motions, and then I'm making sure I backstitch it. So it's not neat, but doesn't need to be. It's in the seam allowance. So just going back and forth over the handles to hold it in. Now I'm going to go and clip all the threads that I can see. They're all now starting to annoy me. Probably should have done that earlier, but whatever. Okay. So now to check your bag, if you're worried that you had some issues in corners, just peer in and have a look. We do not have issues. But it's always good. You just stick your fingers in the corners, check them, make sure nothing's like wrinkled or whatever. I don't know. And then again, we're going to trim off the corner seam allowance again, because we don't want this bag to be sitting funky. I don't know if my zigzag scissors are going to survive this, because there's like so much bulk. They're not loving it. That's right, I have to buy a new pair soon. I feel like we're nearly there. It also doesn't like the velvet, not gonna lie. Alright, so we're just trimming all of that off. Ooh. Mine looks more like I've mauled it, but whatever. Yeah, I think the scissors are done. It's alright, they can survive one more bag. The main reason I'm using the zigzag scissors is because the zigzag perforation allows for the corner to move easier. Otherwise, I would just straight cut it off. I mean, I could, but I've committed now. I'm committed to the cause. Okay, last side. So we've only got three more seams. And the bag's done. I mean, one's this giant, huge seam, but whatever. Then we just turn the bag out, stitch that base bit closed, and stitch the pocket closed. Because we already made a strap, see? Because by now, you're probably like, oh my god, this bag, it's taking forever. I'm done. So by doing the strap first, you don't have to come back and do it later. You can just be like, yeah, finished. Okay. You know what? I'm just going to pour them all out. I'm going to use them all anyway. Whatever. Alright, line up that bottom. Clip it down. And you may wonder why I'm using so many clips on the bottom, because it's a straight bit. And the answer is because I'm now fighting this whole part of the bag against this part of the bag. And this part of the bag's got all the foam. So they're both now really stiff and don't want to be moved as much. So the more clips means the less slippage later while I'm trying to sew it. Let's be honest, they're just clips, it's fine. And again, if you've only got like 20 clips, clip the bottom, clip the top, do it, then do one side, then do the other. All right, so I'm now to that corner. So again, I'm going to use my scissor fingers and then pull it out. Make sure that I've got it nice and even, which I don't. I'm actually trying to tuck it in as the 3D object to make sure I've got enough everywhere, which now I do, so now I feel better. And I'm going to clip it from that kind of center join up to the corners and then work that corner magic. So again, we're allowed to have the wrinkles in the seam allowance, just not the other side of it. So I'm going to clip probably the center of the curve and then distribute the wrinkles either side. Wrinkles are normal, so please don't freak out. If you didn't have wrinkles, it would actually be too tight and then you'll have a whole bunch of other problems, which we also don't want. Then your outside wrinkles. If it fits too easy, you'll actually find that something's going to give when you sew. Alright, I'm using my good purple clips on this corner because again, I'm fighting the bag a little bit. But it's looking lovely. Alright, so grab the corners, pull, push that down to see how much wrinkleness I've got, and then clip it down. So I'm trying to save some of my good purple clips. So they're a different brand. They're not an eBay job, these ones. These ones are, I think they're Clover. So I'm going to try and leave them to do the actual corners because that's where the bag's going to try and fight me the most. Yes. And then up to the top corner and do the same thing. I don't know what's going on with my phone at the moment, but there's a lot of stuff happening. Luckily for me, I remembered to put it on silent this time so you guys don't have to hear it ding. Alright. Yes, I've done it in my lap, so I'm sorry if you missed it, but that's now what it looks like. I am not touching the bag right now. It's standing up all by itself, which is good. It means it's going to stand up all by itself once we finish stitching it in like a minute. So, this is the hardest seam of the bag because I'm now fighting the whole rest of the bag. So slow and steady is gonna win this race. You are not in a hurry. If you need to have a break because it hurts your arm, I totally get it. I used to. I've just eventually become stronger about it. So I'm gonna push this down so that I can get this under the machine, and I'm gonna start just after the curve on a straight bit. And on we go. Back stitch to lock it in. Slow and steady wins the race. You'll notice I'm not actually going fast like I normally would. This is heavy. It's hard to push. Not that I'm really pushing it, but I am trying to help I'm about to guide it around a corner. So I do have to push it a little bit. If you're struggling, cross your hand over, grab this and pull it around as you go around the corner. That will take some of the pressure off your other hand. And since I'm right-handed, my left arm is just not that strong. So now I'm going to readjust. I'm going to push all of this back away from the throat or the needle or wherever we're at. I don't even know anymore. And again, I'm going to grab it and help guide it around that corner. And so now we need to lift this up and move all of this out of the way again. Now, I'm at a strap again, but we're not going to back stitch over it now. We'll go back and do it because I've got like a nice flow going and I don't want to disrupt my stitching. Around the bend. Now I'm coming up to another bulky bit here, so slow and steady. last corner, so I'm gonna grab across and bring it round. Ah, would you look at that? Nailed it! And before I turn the machine off, I'm gonna come back up to where my straps are, and I just want to reinforce them, so I am gonna backstitch at the start and then just zigzag back and forth over the top of them. They're not as thick as that side seam where the zip needed to attach to the little strap connector things, so I can actually backstitch over these. If you're worried your machine won't handle it, pivot your whole bag. Or do a straight line and then lift up your needle and then go back and do another straight line. And that way you don't have to pivot the bag either, because it is huge. Okay, now I'm going to trim my corners again. I'm just going to fight my scissors. It's fine. Cutting this many layers will kill your scissors anyway. This is why mine are dead, because I do this. Because I'm currently cutting a lot. So, foam, 2 layers of velvet, 2 layers of a heavy interfacing. Like, it's a lot for little cheap scissors. I think I only paid like $15 for these scissors, so I think they're doing surprisingly well. And they've lasted me a long time. So these are Triumph brand from Spotlight, and I bought them when they're on sale. So they're just cheap. But don't get the Semco ones, because they don't actually cut. You think these are bad. They do worse than this when they're new. Okay. Home stretch. Last corner to cut, I think. I hope. Excellent. All right, so now we're looking pretty good. So we're going to go to the top of the bag, and we're going to take this little top gusset-y piece. So where the zipper, so the zip is in here somewhere, in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold this over, and we're going to attach it to the top. So the top of the bag and the top of the gusset piece, so the top of the lining, we're going to join those two center line, like little marks that we made. If you've got a notcher, you probably should have used that. And then I'm just going to stitch across the top and then back stitch, just to lock that in. So that is now attached as one piece instead of 2 separate ones. So I'm going to do the same to the other side. So the joint here, we're now just going to join them at the other edge as well. So what this is going to do is when we turn the bag out, this is going to stop the droopy lining at the top of the bag. Which is something that you can't do with a drop-in lining, because you can't stitch this in. Okay. Big moment of truth. Did I miss anywhere? We're about to find out when I turn it in the other way. So, because we've left this giant hole at the base, we can just reach in, grab a corner, and pull. So the birthing of the bag should not be like a painful, stressful nightmare, because we've left pretty much the whole bottom of the bag open to do it. Which is awesome! So I'm just pushing it in. I'm not really taking a whole lot of care. I have faith that this bag is tough and can handle it. It's got crazy amounts of interfacing, crazy amounts of strong thread. So I'm just going to stick my hand in now and start pushing at all the corners, everywhere. Oh, look at those corners. They look great. So make sure that you are pushing with your fingers. So I'm actually not doing one, I'm doing like 3 fingers. I'm just pushing along that seam to push it all the way out so it looks nice, it feels nice. Other side. Do the same thing to the other side. Oh, I got some threads. That's right. This is why we trim our threads, people. Obviously I didn't, so I'm, you know, the pot calling the kettle black, but whatever. Okay. I'm going to stand up and do this. So now when I look in his bag, see how this doesn't sag at all? It's because we've attached it. See, it can't go anywhere. Looks good. All right, so I'm gonna stick my hand through the pocket and grab that giant hole in the bottom of the lining. Now, if you want to, you can pin this together. I will not be, because it's a straight line and I got this. It won't feel like a straight line because it's attached to the bag, but you just slow and steady go around it. It'll be fine. Okay, back stitch, always back stitch. I'm sure you're sick of me saying it by now. So your middle two tabs, cutout, notches, whatever we're calling them, should also match up because we matched them up earlier. If they're not, you should go back and clip instead of just freehanding it like I am. Mine match up, so it's fine. If they don't match up and you keep stitching, at this end where you finish, you're going to have like a little kind of bubbly fold over something. Not ideal. Alright, so now we're just going to fold those raw edges into the pocket. And then if you want to, you can pin it or clip it or, I don't know, whatever. I'm going to stitch a little bit and then I'm just going to grab one of my little fabric tags. Well, actually they're satin ribbon tags, but whatever. Stick it in the center of the pocket and continue stitching along like that. Back stitch at the end. Your bag is done. Let me just turn it inside out so you can see. Oh no, the bag is not done. I lied. Sorry, I haven't finished. We still need to put the press studs on here. Alright, but the inside of the bag is, you can't see it because it's dark. It is beautiful. You push all your edges to the edges so it sits nice and flat. It should fit beautifully. Alright, I'm going to hit pause while I go get everything ready for this because the video is already long enough. Alright guys, so I am using the cam snaps for the pockets. So I am using a ruler marking thing. I have to use this because it's black and I've got the cam press with the different ends. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the middle of the pocket piece, not the flat piece, because we can deal with that later. So I'm going to mark the middle and I'm going to mark 1/2 inch down from the top. And that's where I'm going to put my pieces. So again, I'm going to mark the middle and then 1/2 inch down from the top. Like so. You possibly can't see it because it is done in like a very light chalk, but unfortunately I picked a black bag to do, that's my fault. So now instead of cutting like an actual giant hole, I'm just using a sew-all, which is basically a big pointy stick. So I can stab the hole through all the layers. I'm just going to wiggle it around. That helps to open it up a little bit more. And then I'm going to stick the back in through the hole that I just made, theoretically, if I can get it in. There we go. Hole. And then I'm going to take, so I'm putting the female ends on here. Now, you might be wondering, why didn't I do this earlier? The answer is, mainly because I forgot. Also because I was in sew mode. So this is probably a lot easier if you do it before you attach this side to the bag. But it's not impossible. You could have also used magnetic snaps if you wanted to. So you would do that before you stitch the bottom of the bag shut. Remember when we basted it, you don't baste it so that you can get the magnetic parts in. I like snaps. I feel like they give a little bit of added security. I also quite often use the metal ones, but I'm still waiting on the cam things to come in the mail. It's been like 2 months now. They've got to be coming soon. I also just threw my sew-all somewhere. I think it fell in the bin. So this is not going to damage the bag by squishing it like this either, by the way. You might be like, oh my god, what am I doing? It's fine. Squish it down. Then we're going to do the same to the other pocket. So again, I'm going to grab my ruler, find the center, mark the center of both sides. And the reason I don't do this before we start sewing everywhere is because what if you sew it crooked and then it's not the center? That is not ideal. Okay, do I have another sew? I do. Now I've got my red one. Let's try not to throw this one away. I think it landed in the bin, and the bin's full of like stringy bits that's going to be hard to find it. So I will do that after the camera's finished. Okay, so again, we're going to grab the bottoms. So I would be using, if I was going to do magnets on this, I would use the small magnets, not the big ones I use for wallets. I feel like they're too big for the size that we're doing. I do have some on my website. I possibly should have done them for you, but this is what I envisioned in my head, so this is what we're doing. And I'm sure by now you all know how to install a magnet. You've seen me do it like a gazillion times. And probably everybody else's channel as well, now that I think about it. Alright, stab it in. Wiggle it around. You don't have to wiggle it too much. It's just allowing this to go through easily. She says as she can't get it through. It's because I'm not looking. There we go. Alright, I should have one more bottom here. There it is. So put the bottoms on, stick it in the pocket. I definitely should have done this while we were building the side, but it doesn't matter. It can still be done. Like that, and then I'm just going to change out the head to the other half. In a perfect world, you'll have 2 cam snaps, but I feel like that's an expensive mission. All right, so to line these up, I literally just, I can use a pen for this because the lining's red, so I'm going to mark it on the lining side. So you just want to, I actually stick my finger in here so that they're not completely flat. I know lots of people make theirs completely flat. My issue with that is they won't fit everything. So I just stick my fingers in and still do it about ½ an inch from the edge. You want to make sure that the pocket is centered as well. That's why we do this now and not later. So that's the center. So now I'm just going to mark where my snaps want to go. I'm going to do that to both. I'll mark it both now so then I can just stab all the holes and be done. So I just lift it up and mark it with a pen. It's nothing overly professional. In fact, it's probably the opposite of professional, but I'm just okay with it. All right, so then we stab through there, put the shank through, end on. This side will be easier because you can bend the bag out of the way. And squish. So this will just ensure that they definitely match up. Where's that hole? There it is. It's very hard to see on the velvet where the hole is, which I suppose is a good thing, but it's also really makes it a lot more time consuming. Usually I'd be done this by now, but whatever, it's cool. All right, stab a hole. Wiggle, stab a hole, wiggle. In, on, under, press. I do like snap tabs. All right. So long as you've not measured, matched them up, they clip on beautifully. So then we just put push on the bag like so, and she is done. You can zip it up. Would you look at that? And don't forget the strap you made. I hope this tutorial was fun. Please stay tuned. I'm going to do another one. And next week we are working on man bags and things for men for Father's Day. All right, guys. Bye.